And we are broadcasting.
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. on Monday, the 24th of August. The public may watch this meeting via Zoom. I'd like to have a roll call by the clerk, please.
Terry McGee,
Here.
Greg Labasanier,
Here.
Gary Cody,
Here.
Ann Dixon,
Here.
and Deb Bacon.
Here.
Okay, next item, if we would all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll lead. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The next item on the agenda will be the approval of town council minute, July 20th, 2020, and July 30th, 2020. Chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I second the motion.
We have a second. Is there any comments, any concerns with it? Seeing none, Chair, Madam Clerk, would you take a roll call vote, please?
Terry McGee,
Yes.
Greg Labasanier,
Yes.
Gary Cody,
Yes.
Ann Dixon,
Yes.
Deb Bacon.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. The next item on the agenda, Madam Clerk, item A4, would you be so kind?
Report by Raf Tellis regarding sewer use rate study.
Mr. Manager, do we have Rep. Tallis on our page so they can give us a report?
We have Dave Fox on. He was here a second ago. Dave, welcome
I see.
aboard.
I'm here. Hi, everybody.
Hey, thank you very much, Dave. Appreciate it. It's all yours. Do you want to give us a report?
Dave,
Great.
do you want to share your screen by any chance?
Yep, I'm going to try to do that right now so you
All right,
can
I'm gonna
look
make-
at a PowerPoint instead of my ugly mug. So give me 1 second. Let me see if I can figure this out. Says it's disabled.
Hang on 1 second.
Okay.
Make you a co-host.
Hey,
And you now should be able to share your video.
let me see.
Your desktop should be shareable.
Can you all see this?
We can.
Is it, let me just click down through some of these smaller slides. Is this big enough for you all to see, or should I put this into presentation mode?
It's big enough to all of us to see.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, good evening, everybody. I don't know if you all are used to these web-based meetings yet, but I'm not. This is a bit strange, so apologize we're not all together in front of you here. It's been a while since we last talked, so I'm just going to give a brief agenda. I'm going to go through this presentation. I know you have a long agenda tonight, and I'm going to go through this as quickly as I possibly can, so bear with me. Just want to give you, since it has been such a long time since I've been in front of you, I want to give you a brief overview of who we are again, so you know where we're coming from. Give you a real quick introduction as to how we conducted this study, where we are right now, looking at what would be the financial outlook if we did nothing in terms of rate increases for the sewer fund. Hint, that's not a viable solution. And then what the proposed financial plan looks like, what kind of rate increases we need to support that financial plan, why we need those rate increases, and ultimately, what does that mean in terms of an impact on your customers, and then some other considerations for the future. So bear with me. Shouldn't take me too long to get through this presentation. Real quick overview, who we are. Again, my name is Dave Fox. I run our New England-based operations of Raf Tellis' office. We have offices all across the country. We are the largest firm in the country focusing on rate, financial management, pricing, consulting services for the water, wastewater, and stormwater industry. This type of study is our absolute bread and butter. It's what we do on a daily basis. So how do we conduct this study? Essentially, we went through and we wanted to determine what it costs you to run your sewer system, your sewer operations, and how do those costs compare to the amount of revenue you're bringing in? Looking into the things like your operating expenses, just your day-to-day operating expenses, treatment costs, administrative costs, customer service related costs, costs related to renewing your infrastructure so you can continue to provide good, clean, safe service to your customers, costs associated with paying debt service off, any existing debt service and any proposed debt service attributable to funding those capital improvements. Expenses related to adding to reserves or having enough revenue to be able to maintain debt service coverage, and I'll talk about that a little bit. That's a big component of this study on the next slide. And then, comparing all those things to how much revenue you're bringing in the door today and making some recommendations as to how much revenue needs to increase to both meet your operating expenses, your debt service, and also those financial policies that debt service coverage. So with that being said, I'll jump to this next slide. And what you see here, here is on the left side is a chart of what I'm calling your cash flow. The columns there are your revenue requirements or your annual costs, and the green line is your revenue. So what you could see is last year, and what we're projecting even for this year, is that your revenues are exceeding your revenue requirements or your costs, which is great, up until you get to that point of about 2023, which is coming, and that debt service jumps up and you're going to be running a deficit. So in the short term, you're okay from a cash flow standpoint. Where the issue comes in is if you look at the chart on the right, you need to maintain debt service coverage of about 120, not about, exactly, or exceeding 125%. And what that means is you need to generate revenue on an annual basis, backing out operating expenses that not only meets your debt service requirements or your debt service payments, but meets them and an additional 25%. It is an absolute, it's written into your agreement to the debt service that you have. It is a financial obligation, a legal obligation, and as of right now for the sewer fund, without a contribution from the general fund, you are not meeting those obligations, and you should be meeting those obligations from the revenue from the enterprise fund or the sewer fund alone, not with a subsidy from the general fund. So, although you're meeting your base operating expenses in the short term, you are out of compliance of your debt service coverage immediately right now today, and something needs to be done about that. So. We'll look at what a financial forecast looks like under the proposed rates. So what our proposed rate increase is a 50% increase on your sewer rates for the fiscal year 2021, the fiscal year we're in right now. And that's really to meet your debt service coverage obligations and to stop the need for any general fund subsidies and get to a level playing field, bring the sewer fund into the black. And what you'll see here is if you look on the left, the annual cash flow, then in the short term, you're generating more revenue than you need through fiscal year 2023, where that new debt service hits, which is okay. And I'll explain why in just a second. But if you look on the right there, you will immediately come into compliance with your debt service coverage, which is, from my perspective, as your financial consultant who has a fiduciary responsibility to you, and seeing that you're out of compliance with that debt service coverage, that is priority number one in my eyes. So that's incredibly important that we get up there. You'll notice in fiscal year 2023, your debt service coverage does drop back down. Now, I think there's a couple of things going on where I'm not too concerned there. We think that you're probably going to get some additional revenue over the next couple of years, which could completely alleviate that situation. I think because we are talking about such a high rate increase, a 50% rate increase up front right now, it would be somewhat irresponsible to recommend an even higher rate increase to maintain your debt service coverage 3 years from now, or 2 years from now, rather. Let's wait to see what happens. And if you need to make adjustments again, we can do so on an annual basis. But it's imperative that at least a 50% rate increase is approved right now for the purposes of getting that debt service coverage where it needs to be. Now, what does that mean? So, I mean, here a 50% rate increase, what does that mean for your customers? So the typical residential customer that consumes about 1,200 cubic feet, which is about 9,000 gallons of water per quarter, which loosely translates into the demand that they're placing on the sewer system, they're going to see their annual bill increase from about $531 to $712 annually, which is an increase of $180 per year. Put that in some other context. That's about a 34% increase. So we're having a 50% rate increase, but these customers' bills are made up of many different components, and not all of the components are going up by 50%. So that's why you see only a 34% increase on the customer's bill. That's a $45 per quarter increase, $15 per month increase, and less than 50%. Less than 50 cents per day increase to bring you into compliance with your debt service coverage, to assume that there's not going to be any need for a general fund subsidy, which is only really adding to the debt of the utility, bring you into the black, into operating the sewer utility like it's a business, which it should be. I know that having these increases or needing an increase is never the thing that you want to do. I get that. I participate in rate hearings every single week, and it's never an easy thing to recommend them, but this is an absolute necessity at this point in time. And if it's delayed, not only will things only get more expensive, that 50% increase is going to have to go up. There might be legal ramifications, and the idea of you staying out of compliance with your debt service coverage for any longer than you already have is not really viable. Some other things that I'm recommending to the town, other than the immediate need for a rate increase, is to think about, and this is not for any immediate consideration, but something in the future, something to consider once we get the revenue base up and we get on a better financial foothold, is to think about potentially moving to monthly billing. There will be some administrative costs associated with that, but it's shown that customers are it's a much smaller pill to swallow, a monthly bill than a quarterly bill. It helps with your cash flow of the utility, one. It helps with customers planning for their monthly bills. All their other expenses, for the most part, are on a monthly basis, other than their quarterly sewerly bills. So moving them to a monthly basis may help. Establishing a fixed charge by meter size, which is just a kind of a nuance within your rate structure that would bring you more in line with industry best practices. Again, not something that I think we need to worry about immediately, but just something to consider in the future and potentially study. Within the same breath of establishing a fixed charge by meter size, increasing the amount of revenue coming from that fixed charge, it helps with revenue stability purposes. By having some of your revenue be contingent upon water usage, and as customers use less water, your revenues are going to go down because of that. And the more revenue you have coming from fixed charges, the less those decreases or that volatility in water consumption can affect your revenue. And also something that has been, I think, probably the hottest topic in the water and wastewater industry over the past few years is the idea of affordability. And as water and sewer rates continue to rise and incomes not so much, especially for low income or economically disadvantaged households, their incomes are staying fairly stagnant. Water and sewer bills are becoming more and more of a portion of their overall annual expenditures, and as due to that, many utilities are looking at customer assistance programs. What can be done to provide relief for the sewer bills on low volume customer, or rather low income customers? Should something be done? And if so, what can be done? How would that program be structured? How much would that program cost to administer? And what would that mean on rate increases and everybody else that does not take advantage of that program? These are all things to maybe take into consideration for, like I said, for in future rate years, once the utility gets back to a better financial foothold. with that being said, I'll thank you for your time and patience. I hopefully, I got through that quick enough and that wasn't too brutal for you to listen to. I'd be happy to entertain questions or clarify anything at this point.
Yeah, I have a quick question. I don't know if we can get back to our regular screen with all our members. Mr. Mayor.
Sure. Let me stop sharing my screen. Hopefully that will do that.
Is it safe to say that if the sewer line in the sewer system was increased, that it would keep the price down for all the customers, all the users? Is that correct in saying that?
Can you ask that question again, Kerry? I'm sorry.
Yeah. If we had a large, like I think we have 10% of our town is sewered right now. If we had more people sewered on the sewer system, would that have a positive effect on, or would the usage fee still stay the same if our sewage system was larger than what it is?
No, that would be a beneficial change. If you had more customers on the system, there'd be more revenue coming in. And yeah, part of when I talked about the debt service coverage, you remember on that chart showing in 2023, it goes below the requirement. The part of the reason I'm not recommending a rate increase now at this point to alleviate that is because we do anticipate more customers on the system and a potentially larger revenue base, which would benefit you. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Does other council members have any questions for Mr. Fox? Yes, Deb Bacon. You on? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to unmute. Thank you. Yeah, I do have a question. Actually, it's probably for the town manager and Nick Gorham. I have brought this up in the past, Mr. Fox. We have a development in West Greenwich that we believe has hooked into our sewer line. And that's one of the questions is it the town's sewer line? We have maintained the sewer line. We have upgraded the sewer line in this large development hooked into this line. So shouldn't they be paying sewer assessments? So, and it looks like they're expanding this. So are we taking that into consideration? Are they just, as I said before, free flowing right through our line? So I'm a little concerned that we could have potential revenue, but because of the fact that no one knew that they had hooked into our line. So I'm concerned that, maybe it does not have to be 50%, especially if these folks, if they pay sewer assessments and pay the sewer use fee to hook into our line.
Okay, does a solicitor or do you have any comments on that?
What development is that?
Cedar Ridge. I brought this up about 2 years ago, and then I brought it up again when we were discussing this before. So I was just wondering,
Nick,
I'm sorry, Kerry, what?
No, it's okay. Nick's trying to talk, but he's on mute.
Oh,
Deborah, where is this development located?
It's a development on the opposite side of Route 95 from center of New England.
Okay, it's in the center of New England, but on the West Greenwich side?
Correct.
yes.
On the
Okay.
West Greenwich side of Route 95.
Okay.
And the development uses the line that's been beneath New London Turnpike for many, many years, which the state of Rhode Island built in anticipation of digital equipment locating in Rhode Island back in the late 70s, early 80s, which was an initiative of Governor Garrahy. Never happened. We built the sewer line. There was a lot of infrastructure installed for digital, but they never came. Nonetheless, the sewer line does extend all the way up to center of New England. And the idea that Member Bacon is talking about is that since that line does physically go through the town of Coventry, is there any merit to taking the position that the town should be able to assess all of the properties that contribute flow to that line, even if they're outside of Rhode Island? And
You mean outside of Coventry?
I'm sorry, outside of Coventry. Thank you, Deb.
And
I
it's
don't want to
true
get
that-
into a legal opinion here. I can only tell you that according to West Warwick, the town right now is collecting assessments for all of the connections to that line that are within the town of Coventry. The issue of the town of West Greenwich connecting into that line has never been resolved. I will point out, however, that I'm sure if you ask West Greenwich, their position will be, well, we have paid for a share of the capacity, just like Coventry has. And part of that capacity is what we anticipated contributing to the line from a development like Cedar Ridge. And so their position is we owe Coventry nothing. And West Warwick's position is even though we don't necessarily own the line and we're not responsible for the repairs to it, West Warwick is, we don't have to pay, well, excuse me, even though we don't have to pay for repairs to that line, we do get the benefit of all of the assessments on that line, which is significant. So,
But isn't it true that we have been maintaining and upgrading that line?
we have made some improvements to that line that were associated with the center of New England.
But I think that's something we really need to look into
You
because
know something? It's an excellent point. It's never been resolved. I think someday it should be.
well,
But-
especially if we're talking about a 50% increase, we may not
Yes.
need to do a 50% increase. It could be much lower if we have those. I mean, there are quite a few homes and it looks like they're extending into another phase over there. So I'm not sure how many
Right.
homes. So
I-
if that contributes.
To sum up, though, I can tell you that West Warwick is not in favor of it, and neither is West Greenwich, because West Greenwich says, well, we paid for our capacity on that line, and West Warwick says, don't look a gift horse in the mouth, you're getting a great deal. That's their position. I'm not defending it, and I'm not saying they're right either. You make an excellent point, Member Bacon.
Yeah, I just want to make sure since we maintain and upgrade, I mean, we didn't do that, they wouldn't be able to hook in. So my other question is, when we're taking into this consideration, I know, more water equals more revenue. But what I am concerned with is, do we have any bypass meters on these for the sewer usage? I just don't want people who are filling pools, underground sprinkler systems, want to go and wash your car. Do we have bypass meters? Do we allow that?
We do allow that, and they are on a substantial number of locations. So they are on there. They're not being
Okay.
charged for those.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
Okay,
That is correct.
okay, fantastic. So will we be able to get some answer about Cedar Ridge?
Yeah, I think Bacon makes a good point that, within light of a possibility of a 50% tax increase on this use, it would be a good time to.
But they're already paying usage in West Greenwich, if I'm not mistaken on this. They're just not paying it to us. They're paying a usage fee. We don't collect it, but they're paying one already. They're not dumping in for free.
But they're paying it to West Warwick.
That's correct.
Exactly.
So
Well,
they can-
Plus.
We're maintaining and upgrading the line, so.
I think Member Bacon's point is that line goes through Coventry. And to the extent it goes through Coventry, we should be collecting some type of premium, particularly if we have made improvements to it. So Member
Yeah.
Bacon makes an excellent point. It's just, it would either require cooperation or last resort litigation to clarify that, because when the state built it back in the early 80s, when they finished it, they never really said who it belonged to. But like Member Bacon says, the fact is it goes through Coventry.
And we're maintaining and upgrading. We're paying for it.
We don't
So
maintain it, Mrs. Bacon. The state maintains it,
the
correct?
state actually maintains that, so we haven't done any upgrades at all.
We've done
The
the
only
upgrade for Center of New England, as far as I understand, to connect in for Center of New England. But as far as the day-to-day maintenance, Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, that we're not paying for that on that line, correct?
No, we're not. The improvements to center of New England, no.
All right, if you could just look into that further, Mr. Solicitor, Mr. Manager, just look into it and get a definitive answer. And I mean, I certainly would hate to get caught into a legal battle, but if that's what it takes, I mean, but if you could do a little more investigating in light of this large increase that we have to take, just get us an answer on that. That'd be appreciated.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Mr. Fox while he's here?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, Mrs. Dixon.
Mr. Fox, based on your experiences working with a number of communities, when you recommend increases, is it the same increase for commercial property as it is for residential property? I'm curious about that. My second question is, when you say one alternative is to charge a fixed charge by meter size, tell me about that. So first start off with a uniform standard charge for commercial and residential, or is there some precedence to charge a different percentage for each type?
Great questions. I'll address the first part and then I can get to the meter size. Typically on the wastewater side, there is not much of a justification to have one volumetric rate for one customer class versus another volumetric rate for another customer class. That's more common on the water side, where you would see maybe a residential customer class paying more volumetrically than a industrial customer class is due to their peaking characteristics. They're placing more volatile demand on the system. They're irrigating lawns and washing dishes and taking showers at the exact same time, whereas industrial customers tend to use water very consistently. There's not much of a metric there on the wastewater side other than potentially the strength of the wastewater being placed on the system. And using a volumetric component or even a fixed charge is not the greatest proxy for indicating any differences in the cost of service for a one customer class versus another. So on the wastewater side, it's very common just to see uniform charges. Other than getting to your second question of potentially adjusting the fixed charges by meter size, that's reflecting more of the capacity to provide service to a 6-inch customer than a 5/8-inch customer. It's fairly an industry standard or allowed through a cost of service study to assess a higher charge for larger meter sizes than smaller meter sizes. So a commercial property typically, within reason, an industrial property will have a larger meter size than a single family residential home. And as such, they would pay more per quarter for that fixed charge on the fixed charge only, not on the volumetric charge than a single family residential home would.
So you offered several suggestions to the council, and if we were to pursue the fixed charge by meter size, what impact would that have on the percentage increase on the residential properties?
A very minimal impact. It would benefit those customers, but very minimal. It also would require a good bit of data scrubbing and analyses and auditing to ensure that the data that we're utilizing to base the analysis off of, and then also, more importantly, charge the new charges for meter sizes off of. That's one of the reasons, or the primary reason, why I recommended to have that be something to look at a future iteration rather than right now.
Okay. My last question is this. Right now, as you say, cash flow is okay for now. We need to increase our capacity to 125% revenue in order to pay down the debt service. And I'm wondering, do you have any indications of how we got ourselves into this situation? Were we not charging enough to begin with? I mean, I'm just trying to understand, because when people are asked to pay 50% more,
Yeah.
you're going to wonder, did they pay too little before? Or were they charged a reasonable rate, but this is where the situation is right now, and this is why we need to increase the charge? So I need to understand a little bit more about what we were doing and what we want to do going forward.
Yeah. I don't want to. I have not been working with you long term. This is my first project with you, so I don't want to speak to what was done previously, but I can tell you, just based on the cash flow and your coverage, that sewer rates were not increased at an adequate level. And I think what can be done going forward is to recognize that a 50% rate increase is not necessary. It is necessary right now, but waiting 5 years for a rate increase or 10-year rate for a rate increase and then having a 50% rate increase is not necessary. What's most common in the industry, and I think municipalities that are really the industry best practice on maintaining their financial sufficiency and maintaining their financial plan, are having increases on an annual basis. They're revisiting their financial plan. I've put together a non-proprietary financial model for you all that's getting turned over to the town. A draft version has already been turned over. At the end of the engagement, a final version will be turned over that I encourage you to use early and often on at least an annual basis, and understand for fiscal year 2022, rather than just saying, hey, we think we're good till fiscal year 2023, make sure that's the case. And in fiscal year 2022, go through the analysis, update the model with new operating expenses, debt service, customer information. And if adjustment needs to be made, make that adjustment on an annual basis. It really reduces the volatility and the sharp fluctuations and the need for rate increases. Your customers, if they're seeing a 3% rate increase every year, even if that equates to 50% over time, it's a heck of a lot easier to swallow than it is in 50% in one fell swoop.
So what you're saying is that if we do approve say, a 50% increase, for example, we need to really have a plan by which we look at our financial situation on an annual basis and determine if we need to make another adjustment or not.
Yes, ma'am. That's exactly right. And perhaps the best case scenario is that you go through that process and you realize our revenues are fine, our debt services coverage is fine, and we don't need a rate increase this year. That's best case scenario, and hopefully that will be the case. But you don't want to get into a situation where you let it go for 5 years, you don't look at it, and then all of a sudden you need another 50% rate increase because you're in the same financial situation. Look at it annually, make adjustments if necessary, and I can almost guarantee those adjustments are going to be of smaller magnitude if you're doing that every single year.
I appreciate your comments because it's so easy to just like, okay, he's got 4 bullets here, let's choose one. And I'm looking at developing a plan by which we make reasonable decisions based on the data and not just choose one option and say, okay, this is it for now. We can put this aside and we don't have to worry about it for a while.
I wouldn't.
Provide us with some information about how we would look at this at an annual basis. Does it mean hiring your company on an annual basis? What does it mean?
Of course, I'd be happy to provide you with that information. Some of my clients that I work for, they do hire me to come in once a year, actually do the analysis for them. Some of my other clients have me come in and just look over their shoulder, look over the work. I built the model, so I know the model very well, and just make sure that there's nothing sticking out at me that's incredibly, jumping off the page is incorrect, just as a kind of a second set of eyes on it. And then some of my clients they call me maybe every 5 years or so, just to come in and redo this analysis from the ground up. But they're more than capable of updating these models. And we purposely, as much as I want more work, but we purposely create these models to be user-friendly such that, folks at the city, John Arnett is more than capable of updating this model and maintaining it on an annual basis without my assistance. It's been great working with you all. I'd be more than happy to do that, but you don't need me to do that, no.
Thank you, Mr. Fox.
You're welcome.
Mrs.
Okay,
Dixon, Mrs. Dixon, if I may interject, Mr. President.
Yes.
Mrs. Dixon, that's the reason we went with the system we went with. This wasn't just a rate study. It was also to put a system in place to allow us to do those annual evaluations, determine where we're going, and be able to do adequate fund resources that we need to function. Also, we're looking at the last time we had a rate increase, I believe, was 2013. And that rate increase was not to the amount that was recommended by the consultant. It was less than. So we have not had a rate increase on the usage in a number of years, and that's why we're so far behind on this. It's been allowed to just go on. And when they haven't taken place, they haven't been up to the need that was recommended to keep us stable. So that's why we have this problem.
Thank you for that update and clarification, and I'm happy to see that we have a long-term vision on what we need to do year by year. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, are there any other questions by any council members?
Yeah, Mr. President, I do.
Cody's raising his hand. Go ahead.
Me?
Yes, Mr. Cody, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I don't know if this is accurate. I believe it to be. If it's not, one of the other council members or the manager can correct me. But Mr. Fox, we currently have what I believe is 2 new sewer line projects that are complete that we have not sent out assessments on, Hazard Street and Arnold Road. If we were to send out assessments on those, would that take some of the pressure off the rate increase?
Yes.
In the short term answer, what is
In the short term, yes. It
Right.
would not change the long-term outlook. In the long term, and by long term, I mean potentially even the next 2 years,
Yep.
you need to get your revenue base up. And that means a rate increase, not relying on the assessments. But yes, in the short term, that could potentially provide relief.
Okay, and I need clarification on that. We need to maintain 125% of our debt service. Is that a state law? Is that a federal law? Who comes up with that 125% of debt service to be in compliance?
Would you
In
like me to
compliance
answer
with
that?
what?
Mr. President, I can answer that.
Okay, Mr. Gorham.
The bonding documents that allowed us to borrow the money to build most of our sewer system require that. And I think what Mr. Fox was saying very early on in his presentation is that the town needs to follow the requirements of the financing documents, the bonding documents. And this is one of the biggest things that we must follow that we just haven't. We have to update the sewer use charges that we're going to propose to the public and then act on them. And that's why we are close to being in the red. And as Mr. Fox has said, he anticipates we will be back in the red. We have to do this more frequently and act on it more frequently. That is, do the study more frequently and then make a decision. It's not really a state law. I suppose you could find a state law that requires it, but the fact is it's right in the financing documents. For the
Well, no, if it's in a contract we signed with the lender
it is.
who bonded these projects out, I
Yes.
don't want to be in violation of that, because that puts the lender in a position to be able to call the bond as fully due
Right.
if we're not in compliance with the lending documents and the contracts that we sign.
And that is
I'm just trying, I didn't know if it was a state law, if it was a federal law under the Clean Water Act, or what it was. And now I understand, and I think the people who are watching this Zoom meeting for the purpose of hearing the sewer rate study may now understand that it is in the bonding documents. It is actually a requirement of the contract that we signed with the lending company to be able to perform this project.
Precisely.
Thank you
Okay.
for asking that question. That was a good point of clarification.
Okay, thank you.
you.
Mr. Boston, you have a couple questions?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Fox, I'm just curious if you could tell me, for instance, say a number of users that we would need to add, say, even from this point, say, to be at ground zero, whereas we didn't need to raise the rate. But in order to come up with that type of revenue, would you have any idea approximately how many more users it would take, say, right now?
I don't off the top of my head, and I apologize. I don't have that information. I'd have to, and I wouldn't want to guess because I'd probably be wrong. It would depend on the type of customer, and I'd want to go run that analysis. I could do that for you and provide some loose answer to you, but
yeah, I'm just looking for an idea because, for instance, we've got projects that at a point not too far off in the future are going to happen that are going to pay us assessments, large assessments without additional infrastructure work to be. But more importantly, for the usage side, they're going to be adding users. So for instance, we just discussed 96 units at the Woodland Manor, which will be happening. So we're going to have 96 users on the line, which are going to be, that is going to be paying. So how many, what type of percentage is 96 units going to add to the users? Would that be, now we only need to raise 25%, or at some point in the future, let's say when we've added all of these additional users, where you mentioned we might not need to raise the rate, but maybe at one point in the future with enough users, we could reduce the rate.
That's incredibly possible. I don't want to speculate and answer your question of how many users you would need to alleviate a 50% rate increase. I could run that analysis or I'd have to make some assumptions, but I can run a similar analysis to that and provide you with some sort of answer. I can't do it on the fly right now. I need.
That's fine. But what would it take much to be able to run an analysis, even with with those assumptions?
The assumptions of 96 units? No, I could run that fairly easily.
Even with say, okay, if it's 96 units, 100 units, 200 units.
Yeah, we'll round it off. Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I could do that. And then, the thing though is, even if we knew within the next year, or we thought, even with a high sense of probability within the next year, those 100 or so customers were going to come on board. From my perspective, I'd still be recommending to you a 50% rate increase. That would not change my recommendation because of your immediate being out of compliance with the bonding requirements.
Correct.
I would say when those customers come on board and your revenues do increase, because that's a fantastic thing. And during that new financial planning process of next year, looking at fiscal year 2022, take that into consideration. And if you remember on my my presentation in 2023, it looks like that debt service coverage drops down. Perhaps that goes away, and then that'd be fantastic if it does. You don't need another rate increase. But even if I will answer your question, I'll get to what that'll look like. But it's not going to change my recommendation.
Oh, no, I'm not looking to change the recommendation.
Okay.
What I was looking to do was to say that maybe this 50% increase would be a short-term solution, as opposed to being on there and never going away, or if at a point in time, now it remains level, where, for instance, we've remained level for 7 years, and you're suggesting annual increases, maybe with the increases of users would help alleviate those future increases.
I understand the impetus of your question now. Okay. I'd be happy to provide you with that information.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Mr. Fox? Yes, Councilwoman Bacon.
Actually, it's not for Mr. Fox. Kerry, I just want to ask, would we be able to have any questions, like a public comment, in case any of the public that are watching would be able to ask him any questions? Because
at the end, we will have public comment. If there's any questions, I'm sure that any questions, Mr. Fox, we can have them emailed over to the town manager, and we can get any questions answered. This is probably going to come up in front of us at the next meeting, and we can make arrangements to have possibly a public hearing, or some email questions might work out better.
Couldn't we just have, even if it's just for just a few questions for him? Because there could be things out there that we haven't thought of either. So I was just wondering, could we do that? Even if it's just for 15 minutes, we take questions and then that's it.
Mr. President, can I interject something that might help shed light on
Not on the agenda.
Yes, Mr. Gorham, would you comment on that? It's not on the agenda. Make sure
public
that
hearing is not on the agenda, but what I just want to address specifically Member Bacon's question. Under our Enabling Act that the General Assembly passed, that allows us to have a sewer system, a rate increase is considered an amendment to an ordinance. under our charter, an amendment to an ordinance requires a public hearing. So people will absolutely, by law, have a chance to weigh in on this before we do anything,
Could
which
we
I think
have,
is your concern.
yes, would we be able to have Mr. Fox back? So this way at the public hearing, if there are any questions, would we be able to have him back?
I'm sure we could make that arrangement, Mr. Fox. Mr. Manager, could you make them arrangements? Would you be able to do that, Mr. Fox?
I'd be happy to.
Okay,
And I wasn't asking for a public hearing tonight. I was just asking if we could have public comment at this time.
Just to advise, we're looking at first reading on the 14th, on next month, and then the public hearing would be the next meeting after posted.
Okay, so if you, yeah, Mr. Fox.
I'm correct. That's only a 10-day posting on that one, correct?
Mr. Gorham, is it a 10-day post on that?
Oh, excuse me. Yes, there's a notice requirement. It's in the charter. I
10
think
days.
you're correct, Mr. Manager. It's 10 days.
So we would have the 14th would be the first reading, and then on the 28th, we would have the public hearing on this.
Yes.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much. If that's it, Mr. Fox, I thank you very much for the presentation, and the manager, we're getting a hold of you. If you could make yourself available on the 28th for any for a public hearing, that'd be great. And I appreciate it.
I'm putting it on my calendar right now, so consider me available on the 28th.
Dave, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that being said, the next item on the agenda, Madam Clerk, would be A5, please.
Presentation by School Building Committee.
Okay, Mr. Manager, do we have a school building? I see Mr. Murray's on, so if you're ready, Mr. Murray, it's all yours.
I am. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes,
Yes,
Luke,
we
are you
can.
going to need to share your screen?
Yeah, I will.
Hang on, let me give you the ability.
Okay.
All right, you now have that ability.
Okay. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
The presentation?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Want to thank you, Mr. Council President, members of the council for having me on tonight and getting me on the agenda. As we all know, there's a lot going on with schools right now. You know, just a few things with COVID, but we have a lot of other things going on. And one of the big things is the necessity of school construction project, which continues to march on post-COVID, or I shouldn't say post, in the thick of it. So I wanted to give you an update tonight. This will be one of several updates that I give throughout the process. If you have any questions at the end, I urge you to go ahead and ask, and hopefully you'll be a little bit more informed after tonight. So if you remember, I can get this to advance. Yes, the rise and necessity of school construction. So we had submitted a letter of intent earlier in the year, and then we submitted the RIDE Stage 1, which you did approve as a body earlier in the year, pre-COVID, and that has since been approved by RIDE as of April. We're glad to see that move forward with our partner Studio Jade, who got us through that. And if you remember, that was funded through a $150,000 grant from RIDE to get us through that initial hoop. The Stage 1 really identifies the needs of the district, so that's looking at the building, kind of doing a comprehensive assessment based on what RIDE, the sort of framework that RIDE requires. And now that we're through that Stage 1 process, we're moving into Stage 2. And then unfortunately, due to COVID, it got delayed. We realized quite recently we needed to get this effort continuing on. We had reached out to RIDE. They have not extended their deadlines. They are still expecting us to hit one of the dates, whether it be September deadline or February. It is infeasible that we'd be expected to hit the September submission deadline. And so we've set the goal of September 15th to go ahead and get that submission in with May 2021 anticipation of the school building authority approval. So Stage 2 is really response to the need, and that's what we're working on. So we've identified all the needs of the district, which are great. We knew that going in. Jacob's report told us a lot to begin with. Studio Jade identified even more. We all know, I think intuitively, there's a lot of need in the district. So the building committee, which is quite robust, and we're lucky to have a lot of our members who have a depth of experience in the construction and design industry, is charged with assessing and identifying these needs And really taking into consideration multiple things and balancing this. So that includes identifying the project scope. So we have a lot of need, a lot of projects. We need to refine that for stage 2. This is a 1 to 5 year plan, not a 5 through 20 year plan. So this is something we can identify that could be tangibly possible within the next 5 years. The project size, so obviously we want to bite off too much more than we can chew. And then the programmatic needs and things like what is a 21st century learning environment look like? How do we address the priority 1 needs, the most heavy needs of our district, while trying to advance our efforts forward as far as educational needs. Obviously, we always have on the other side of the equation funding limits, logistical constraints, and other needs, and we are aware of that, and I'll go over that in a minute. So what are we doing? Well, we're developing a scope of work based on the assessment of needs. So like I said, we need to refine that down. We need to get an actual project that we could move forward with. I could say the project is to touch every school and take care of priority 1 needs. Well, another option may be to look at rebuilding 1 school and sacrifice some of the priority 1s, or at least only address the absolutely critical items. I will tell you that in recent meetings with the building committee, we are starting to hone in on a project, quite possibly the middle school, with addressing priority 1 needs in some of our other most critical needs in some of our other schools. And the reason for that is we have a lot of students. That's obviously a big transition period. We know that there's major issues at the middle school. The quite large school that was originally programmatically for the high school, which had changed to the middle school, actually a junior high school that changed to a middle school, and once housed the Career and Tech Center and administration. So the building is sprawling. We have air quality issues, and on it goes. So we are starting to move a little bit down that path. We may decide to veer out a little bit, but that's the initial discussions. We have created a logical timeline. So one of my big things in working with my co-chair, Alita Hall, was defining a very strict timeline that we could stick to, and I will share that schedule tonight with you. Working within fiscal constraints, I want to thank Mr. Wazika and Mr. Arnett for meeting with myself and the superintendent to kind of discuss the numbers that would potentially be, if we were to go to bond, what would that look like? And I'm not saying we will or won't go forward with this project, but we at least have to be realistic of what the town could potentially afford in the case we move forward and decide to lobby on behalf of a project. That's a key component of this. So they've been very helpful in that. And that'll be a piece of this that will continue that dialogue moving forward. Another piece of this that is critical is conveying information both with you, the town council, and the larger public. It's not a marketing effort, it's an information effort. We realize this is a difficult time for all, especially with school reopening plans and everything in the mix. So it's our duty as a building committee to convey whatever information we have, make sure it's clear, make sure that we answer questions in a pointed manner, to make sure that we give it the best chance of success moving forward. And then we need to make sure that projects are in harmony with the guiding principles. And I'll go over that right now, which the guiding principles as we had seen it during the stage 1 is warm, safe, and inviting. So basically the very core basics of what a school should be, right? You should be able to show up, should be heated or I guess air conditioned, and have a roof over your head, right? The basics. Future ready, which I will say we're lacking. Reflect community values. So, how does the community as a whole feel about their schools when you're asking about equitable access? So you want to make sure, especially with the elementary schools, we're being equitable. The small school feel, large school pride. So basically, the footprints of the school, making it feel, even though we're now a community of 35,000 individuals, it still has that small town feel. The school is a community resource. Many of us know that we have a lot of meetings, events, other things at the high school, the middle school, and expanding that as a resource. So schools aren't just viewed for a portion of the public, they're viewed for everyone in town to use. And sustainable, and that's one key component right now that we're dealing with. The facilities we have right now are quite frankly unsustainable. We have, obviously they're not energy efficient. We've gone through some energy retrofits, the most recent the lighting in the schools, we're converting to LED, but those are stopgap measures, we know that. we need to figure out a sustainable path to lower our long-term operating costs on these buildings. Quite frankly, they're killing us on the operational side year to year. And that's money we could be putting into future-ready schools that are much more adept to the programmatic needs of our community. So just to review our ranking of the stage one thing I just wanted to point out, and part of the reason that we're honing in on the middle school, is that as you see under warm, safe, and inviting, all of the schools ranked at a number one. That was a priority of the community during our open sessions, except for the middle school, where they ranked future ready number one. And I think that's because that is the transition period where you're coming out of elementary school. There's a lot of concern of parents on if they're going to stay in the district or flight to private schools or charter schools. They expect a higher level of facility of their town. And so we want to give them that. We want them to feel and stay in district. All of us have discussed the reasons of why we'd want them to stay in district. Obviously, we lose that money when they decide to go elsewhere. But it's more than that. It's about community pride and being able to say that, you know, we have the best, and, you know, why not stay in a good residential community? Why not stay in our schools? So our actions to date, and I will give this update monthly to you so you know where we're at. The stage two schedule is now complete, which I said I'll share to you next. We're actively working with administration to identify the procurement of the architect. The architect has been very gracious with his time. Phil from Studio Jade has continued to work with us, but we do not have a solidified contract yet. There's some back and forth, and I believe it's in Mr. Gorham's court as far as reviewing the impact fees, which we're hoping to use for this effort. And I'll be quite frank, that we cannot, in my opinion, we cannot not go forward with this effort. The use of impact fees seems appropriate. John Anderson has reviewed it. He feels it's appropriate. There is an understanding that if those fees are not used towards a capital project that moves forward, then we'd likely have to pay that back. At this point, if we've spent $150,000 of RIDE's money and we do not move forward with stage two, that is just a bad perception to leave on behalf of our town with RIDE at this moment. So we're hoping that we can use those impact fees to soften the blow to our operating budget and move forward with this effort. In addition to the architect, there'll be other consultants on board, geotechnical consultants to check the schools, as far as if we're going to look at any future modifications, structural assessments. O'Day engineers on board, go through the schools and make sure, you know, quite frankly, we're not going to fund something and then a roof falls down in another school because we didn't focus on that. And then we're going to develop broad consensus on the stage two goals. So we need to focus on a major renovation. Like I said, it's trending towards the middle school. Addressing priority one needs and NEAS priorities at the high school. This always comes up every budget year. We always talk about the lack of capital. We always talk about NEAS requirements. This has to get done. Some of it will get done with the $200,000 of capital that the council has provided to schools, but we know that we need much more. So we will be we're hoping to address those. And then priority one needs of the elementary school. So for example, I was in the Western Coventry Elementary School on Friday. Mrs. A turned on the water. It was a trickle. So I'm wondering how we wash hands with a trickle of a well, because there's so much mineral buildup in the pipes that the water can't get through. So things like that are critical needs for our district to get things through at the current time. So you should have in your packets a schedule. This is rather small, I imagine, on your screens. But if you notice, there's text in red. Those are town council updates. So as you see, they are quite frequent on a monthly basis. I have sent the schedule to Mr. Wazika. I'm hoping the council will accommodate us on those dates or on or around those dates. The biggest thing is that as we get closer, I'm going to continue to ramp up our correspondence with council. So come December, we're going to be providing a 50% draft on or around November 30th. We're welcome to take questions during that time. I will have the architect available during that time. As we get closer to Christmas, we'll have a 75% draft. And again, I'll have the architect available to take any questions. Then we'll all go on holiday break. We'll come back. The school committee, ideally, will be able to assess, vote on their portion, and then we would bring it back to council and then give them more time to look at it, the 100% document, and then potentially get a vote on it. So all this tracking towards a final date of February 15th of next year. And that is the RIDE required deadline if we're going to move forward with the stage 2 submission. We have a lot of work to do before then. You can see we have a lot of meetings scheduled. We have walkthroughs with RIDE that are required. We have meetings with RIDE that are required. So I want to thank my building committee in advance for a lot of the time that they're going to be giving up. But so far, so good. We have a great team, and I have no doubt that we can keep a laser focus and get it done. So I believe this is the last slide. So what do we intend to do in the next four weeks? Well, we're hoping to finalize procurement of the architect. I'm hoping that your side of the bench can help with that and assessing whether those impact fees are available and are appropriate, because we would like to get them procured. The other thing I didn't talk about is we need an OPM, an owner's project manager. That is a RIDE requirement. It's a low cost item, but necessary on behalf of RIDE. We're going to conduct several workshops. The first one is actually tomorrow night. I wouldn't say the first one. We've had several, but we have another one tomorrow night that deals with core project planning. So that will be looking at some of the core projects we have already identified. The architect's going to lead that session. We had a long-range planning meeting about a week ago. That went very well, and we're going to be doing some exercises on that. We will be doing a walkthrough on September 19th. I'm hopeful that if any town council members want to join us, you're more than welcome. This is your first formal invitation. Feel free to come out. We'll likely tour the middle school, since that seems to be a core project as of date. I would like to maybe tour one other school, maybe an elementary, or maybe even a high school. We're still looking at the schedule, but I will send out a separate formal invite on that, and would like you to join. You can all welcome to join us if you'd like. So at that point, I will stop sharing my screen and certainly ask any questions or answer any questions you have.
I'm sorry. I do have a quick question. Are you there, Mr. Murray?
I am.
Oh, okay, there you are. All right. I have some questions about the impact fees. You did mention that our solicitor is looking into the usage, because you mentioned that if it was voted down by the taxpayers or doesn't go past the council to get on the ballot, then them impact fees would have to be paid back. Is that a fact? Because I have questions about using that, but we're not sure if that's even going to go forward.
Sure. So that's a good question. So my understanding, it has to result in a project, I believe, within 8 years. The key thing is with impact fees, I believe they expire per state law after 8 years. So you eventually have to give those back to the developer. Ed, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but we're willing to take that risk because I know what will come out of the stage 2, even if we don't move forward with a comprehensive project, a project will come out of it. We've deferred a lot of the maintenance for so long, and we all know the issues. The truth is we got to start working some capital back into the schools. So I'm hopeful that we could go for a major project that would be identified in that stage 2 submission. If we're not able to go forward with that, part of my mandate of the architect is identify smaller projects that are that we could potentially address by the town in the near and short and long term. So that way we get something out of this report that would turn into a capital project within the duration of that 8 years. So to answer your question, yes, it's a risk, but at this point, I think we've discussed internally, it's a risk worth taking, and I feel strongly that we wouldn't leave that money on the table.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Does any other council members have any questions? Yeah, Mr. Cody, I see you're waving your hands. Go ahead.
Well, it's really not a question, more of a statement. Luke, I would think that at the presentation, the end of November, you're going to have new council members that are not going to be up to speed on all the presentations that are made to the council, the current council, between now and then. Do you have a contingency plan to be able to go back over everything with a new council when it's seated, so everybody can be on the same page and have the same information?
So that's actually a really good question, because we did discuss that. So yes, the short answer is yes. If you look at the schedule and the way the 50% presentation is scheduled, it was strategically scheduled on that date because we felt that the new council would be seated by that point. In addition, you know, I would gladly reach out to any and all people running for council, all, to provide them with a separate update in coming up, to just get everyone on the same page. So if they were to be elected and gain office, they at least have some broad brush concept of what is going on and where we're at. So I'd be glad to schedule that. I will schedule that. And then, but we have pushed that 50% date to a point where we felt that would kind of get everyone on the same platform. And 50% is still a rough enough draft where if we have questions, comments, input, we can make modifications on the fly.
Okay, because I don't know if it's common knowledge or not, but I know the first time I was seated on the council and this time I was offered an orientation day by the town manager for the new council members. The first time we did it on a Saturday, and we visited the different departments and met with the department heads. And I was going to suggest that that may be a good time for you to be able to do a complete presentation to the new council that will actually at that point be sworn in and be seated. You know, if they still do the orientation day, that would give the school committee and the construction committee an opportunity to meet with all of them at the same time and give a presentation to everybody.
I think that's a great suggestion. If the town manager or new town manager or whoever's in place at the time wants to do that, then I would certainly oblige.
All right. Thank you for your time, Luke. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other council members that have any questions? I see Councilwoman Bacon has a hand up, so go ahead.
Hi, Luke. Thank
How you
you.
doing?
Good. I just want to go over, you said actively looking, working with school administration to identify funds for the procurement of the architect, consultants, and owner's project manager. What kind of, what are we looking at a cost for all of these?
So currently I have a cost of approximately $180,000 for the architect and all of the consultants. That is a proposal we had on the table. That was the initial proposal. I actually have to go back because I believe he was going to give us some relief on that, a 10% deduct. I did compare that to other towns. I did a little research on other towns that have gone through it, and that number is fairly solid. There's one particular architect who I've actually personally worked with in the past, and going through the notes, I believe it was Cumberland, that paid a little less, but he keeps coming back for change orders. Keeps coming back for all the assessments that are included as part of our scope of work. So I feel confident that that's a solid number. The OPM portion, the architect is advised that's typically run under $10,000. That OPM really serves a role at this point to drive the architect and really be our liaison. And quite frankly, it's a check the box with RIDE at this point. We don't have a project. Normally you have an OPM on board at a construction level stage to basically beat up the contractor and everybody kind of shepherd everything along. But it is a requirement. We would have to include that 10,000 and approximately.
Okay, and what the impact fees? What is the amount in the impact fees?
I believe right now, and again, I don't have Sarah at my disposal, but I believe we're looking at 150,000 that was potentially available.
Potentially 150,000?
Yes. So we're still going to be short. We know that. We're looking at, I've been working with Sarah on, how we cobble that together. I'm not part of the day-to-day, so I don't get to see the numbers. So I rely on her and the administration to run that and figure out how we're going to move forward.
Okay, I mean, yeah, it's about 150. Luke, I guess, the stipends that we handed out at your last council meeting, 12,000 for the school superintendent, 6,000 for 2 principals and 2 administrators, each getting that. That's 36,000. That would have made up the difference. Perhaps you guys could have used it for this.
You're right. I could also take
say-
it out of the 128,000 we saved by not hiring a curriculum coordinator. So it's depending on how you look at it. We're certainly always looking to get savings on everything we have, and we could potentially use some of that savings. We're looking at cuts this week. We have upwards of 1.8 we need to cut out, right? So
Well, I know you're making cuts, but and this isn't the time to say it, but I just wanted to just get that out there.
No, I know. I felt it was a bit of a
About it.
broad, I don't want to get into it, but it's definitely a broadside at me right now, and I don't appreciate it.
No, I'm just
I
trying to figure
understand.
out, because the money, we're all gonna have to do this. It's getting very tight along with
No,
it.
if I'm welcome,
So I just-
as with
I
any
just wanted
council
to have
member,
that conversation with you. I just
I'm
wanted,
always welcome to talk offline with any council member. They want to call me and issue a consent. So I'll leave it-
well, as you know, I make all, I do it during council meetings, but thank you very much. So we're looking at about 180,000. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Point taken. Any other council members have a comment or question?
Mr.
I do, Mr. President, but I'll let Ann go.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
Mr. President, I just want to mention that I am one of 2 council people or members who are on this committee with Mr. Murray. And come November, we will need to assign another person because Mr. LeBassinier will not be available. So I just want to remind you that there are 2 places for town council members on this committee. It gives us an opportunity to stay in touch with what's going on in addition to hearing these reports.
okay. Thank you for that reminder. And the next council coming in will replace the outgoing council members. So, all right, I see Mr. LeBassinier, you have a couple comments or questions?
Actually, mine was kind of in the same area as Mr. Cody, knowing that we're going to have new council people coming on, Luke. Have you thought about inviting them on the September 19th open house as well, too? I think that would be important to get them, started in there and seeing things so that way it's just not heaped on the new incoming people when they get there. Again, just a thought, a statement. I want to congratulate and thank you and the entire building committee. It's a ton of work you guys are doing, and I personally appreciate the work that the committee has done. And hopefully, town and the community, we can address as many of those needs as we can see fit. So that's all. Thank you, Luke.
No,
Okay,
it's a good suggestion. I will take it to heart. I think it's a great suggestion. So thank you.
okay, Mr. Mayor, I want to thank you for giving us this presentation tonight. I know you guys, as a committee, have put in a lot of hard work and many countless hours, so I appreciate it. And we certainly will do our best to work with your time schedule, and we look forward to the presentations to keep abreast of what's going on. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay. With that being said, the next item on the agenda, Madam Clerk, would be B1, please.
Renewal of temporary outdoor expansion of premises, Rampo Inc., doing business as Black Oak, which is a Class B liquor license.
Okay, Mr. Manager, you have any comments on that?
This is, we've given them 190-day on this already for this expansion of business. They're changing it up a little bit this time over the previous. The first time they wanted to also use the side part of the building in the driveway. They're going to eliminate that and work with just 7 tables in the front of the building, which they've been using right along, but they're limiting it down to that. There's been no complaints. We've had no issues. Police have no issues, and zoning has no issues with doing a renewal on this for another 90 days.
Okay, we've all had a chance to look this over, and certainly we want to do whatever we can to help business in these trying times. So is there any questions from anybody from the council? Yes, Ms. Bacon?
I know for this renewal of the license, do we need a public hearing for that, or is it okay just how it's set up tonight?
We do not need a,
We didn't do a public hearing on any of the first ones on these.
Okay, I just wanted
Didn't need it.
all right,
Okay.
I just wanted clarification. Thank you.
All right, so no public hearing is necessary. If there's no other questions, the chair will entertain a motion.
I'm sorry, Mr. McGee, I do have a question.
Okay,
The zoning official had no concerns about the issuance of the license. That was back in May. So when there is a renewal, do we go through a formal process of going to the zoning official and ask for some kind of update and new data?
I advised the zoning official that the only change is the elimination of one side. So nothing changed. There was no addition to the previous approval. We've eliminated the side tables and side chairs. So I spoke to him. I didn't require or ask him to send me another notification that he was fine. He gave it to me verbally that there were no issues. He was satisfied with it because there were no changes other than reductions in the area that they were going to use.
I thank you for your thoroughness. Thank you very much. But I think that going forward, when we do have renewals of this type, there should be some kind of notation, even if that the manager spoke with the owner or the zoning official and everything is okay. So I
We'll have
think,
that in for the next one, Mrs. Dixon.
yeah, I just think because seems like an easy one, but there may be more difficult ones in the future. And if we just annotate some of the discussions we're having, I think it covers us very well. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. So with that being said, the chair will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I
Second,
second.
Do we have a second? All in favor, Madam Clerk?
Terry McGee, Greg Lavassigna,
Yes.
Gary Cody,
yes.
Ann Dixon,
Yes.
Deb Bacon.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, the next item on the agenda, Madam Clerk, would be C1, please.
Awarding
Mr.
of
President,
Yes,
if I may, if
yes.
there's, I don't know if there's any flavor from anybody else on the council, but I would like to recommend that we move the joint town council school committee resolution to the top of the list and address that first out of consideration for any school committee members or school administration personnel that may be attending the meeting via Zoom for just this purpose.
I think the next couple items are relatively quick and, you're talking about a 10-minute difference. So, I mean,
Okay.
I mean, it really is pretty basic, these next items. So,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you, sir.
Madam Clerk, I don't know if you read it, but would you read item C1, please?
awarding of the primary winter road salt to Champion Salt LLC.
And also, would you read C2 as they are so related? I believe our DPW director can discuss both of them. So would you do that, please?
Awarding of the secondary winter road salt to Morton Salt, Inc.
Mr. Manager, do you have any comments on that?
I recommend approval of both, but I have Kevin McGee, DPW director, on hand to explain what these are. These are an annual contract that go out just to maintain our salt supply for roads in during the winter. Kev, if you wouldn't mind giving a quick synopsis on this. Unmute
Okay,
your
Kevin.
mic, please.
You're on mute. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Manager. As we have in the past, we're recommending the approval for the award to Champion Salt, a new company that we've dealt with for 2 years. Their total is about $5 less per ton than Morton Salt. Morton Salt is on a 3-year state contract, so they're staying consistent. But back in 2014, 2015, we had a problem with Morton Salt not being able to get enough salt or having the trucks to deliver them. So after that, we came forward with this so that we don't get backed up in the event that Champion Salt can't deliver. We have a backup going to Morton Salt.
Okay, and I see that the price was like $5 a ton cheaper going to Champion Salt. Does any council members have any questions? We've had a chance to look this over. Does anybody have a question? Yes, Councilwoman Bacon.
Hi, Kevin, thank you. Did we have to use Morton Salt at all this year, or did we just stick with Champion? Because we had last year, correct?
Correct. We handled everything through Champion. They were able to provide us with delivery and product throughout the season.
Okay, great, thank you.
Are there any other questions from any council members?
Mr. McGee,
Yes, Mrs. Dixon, go ahead.
I have a question. There have been some very unusual shortages of products due to the coronavirus. And I'm wondering, where does salt come from? And do we have any anticipation that there may be a shortage of salt through this coming year?
Mr. President, may I?
Yes, Mr. Cody.
Mrs. Dixon, good question. Most of the salt comes out of Malaysian salt mines, but if you and your husband ever want to take a ride around the shipyard down in Providence, right on Allen's Avenue, you can see Champion's stockpile that's there now. And if you take a ride down into the shipyard, you can see Morton's stockpile that is there now. and I can guarantee you that unless we have an unreasonably harsh winter, there will be no salt shortage in the state of Rhode Island this coming winter.
Okay, I'm happy to hear that. And yes, I have been down Allen's Avenue, and yes, I have seen the salt piles, but I mean, I always ask the question. For example, we try to get wood up here in Maine and there's a shortage. Imagine
Correct.
wood in Maine, okay? So I'm just asking the question because lots of things are in shortages now because they come from overseas and there are all kinds of trade agreements.
No, I understand that, but they shipped so much in last year because of the mild winter that we had. They had so much extra that they had to accept delivery on because they ordered it, that it's been stored down on the docks all this time. There's plenty down there for this coming winter.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cody. Mr. Dixon, Kevin, do you concur with the explanation that Mr. Cody gave?
Yeah, they also receive salt from South America. They bring the barges up the coastline. We've talked to both Champion and Morton, and nobody is anticipating any shortages this year.
Okay.
But
Well,
that's
thank
what-
you. It was a question I felt I needed to ask. Thank you.
Good question.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions from any council members? Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion.
Motion for approval on both?
On both. There we go. I will second that.
All right, we have a motion for approval on both, and we have a second on approval for both. All in favor, Madam Clerk?
Harry McGee,
Yes.
Greg Labassador,
Yes.
Gary Cody,
Yes.
Ann Dixon. Ann Dixon
Ann.
Excuse me, yes.
and Deb Bacon.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. The next item on the agenda
Thanks,
would,
Kevin.
I'm sorry, next item on the agenda would be C3, Madam Clerk.
Awarding fire protection services to Cintas Fire Protection.
Okay, Mr. Manager, any comments on that?
This is a routine. I'm going to let DPW Director McGee handle the explanation.
Okay, Kevin?
Good evening. Yes, this is a renewal of our fire protection services. Our current contract expired in July of 2020. We went out to bid on the state website, and we actually mailed out invitations to bid to 6 different companies. Cintas is our current supplier, which they have been for the last 8 years, and they were the sole bidder once again for the service. All of the price increases are within good margin of what they were during the prior contract. I recommend approval.
Well, you've been happy with the work that Cintas has done for you, so we've had a chance to look this over. Are there any council people who have any questions? Yes, Councilwoman Bacon.
Hi, in the bid, it states that they're looking for Parks and Recreation also, but on the resolution, it doesn't list Parks and Recreation.
That's correct. I had requested from the Parks and Rec director whether she wanted to be included. She hadn't gotten back to me by the time the RFP went out, so we included them after the RFP came in, and she indicated that she didn't want to be included. So that's why the resolution does not include Parks and Recreation.
Their fire alarm and the inspections, that's not going to take place at Parks and Rec in the building?
I can't answer for the Parks and Recreation director, but she asked not to be included in the resolution for the new contract. She thought she could get it cheaper.
Oh, okay. But she will be having the fire alarm and the fire extinguishers checked, correct? Do we know that?
Yes.
You need to ask her.
Yes, she will be getting them checked
Yep.
and certified.
Okay, so will that have to be another contract coming before council, or is someone will be?
Depending on the cost of it, it may not have to come in front of council if it's a small amount. And it should be. So it should be small enough.
But it will be done though, correct?
Yes, ma'am, it will be done.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from council members? If not, the chair will entertain a motion.
Motion for approval?
We have a motion for approval. We have a second. All in favor, Madam Clerk?
Harry McGee,
Yes.
Greg Labassador,
Yes.
Gary Cody,
Yes.
Ann Dixon,
Yes.
and Deb Bacon.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Kevin, thank you very much for attending. All right, the next item on the agenda, Madam Clerk, would be C4, please.
Tax assessor additions and abatements for the month of March and August.
Okay, we've had a chance to read these, Mr. Manager. Do we have anybody to present these, or are we just gonna go by what we've had a chance?
We have
It's me.
tax assessor Karen Martin is here to explain. She is incognito though.
Okay. Go ahead, Karen.
Okay, we have abatements in the amount of $7,520.04 and additional taxes of $27,652.10.
Okay, this is a normal, well, not that amount, but we had a chance to look it over. Are there any council members who have any questions on the abatement? Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second,
We have a second. All in favor, Madam Clerk?
Harry McGee,
Yes.
Greg Labassador,
Yes.
Gary Cody,
Yes.
Ann Dixon,
yes.
Deb Bacon.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Karen, for the update.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda would be item C5, please, Madam Clerk.
Joint Town Council School Committee Resolution Agreement on State Funding for COVID-related expenses.
Okay, I see Mr. Murray's here. Mr. Wazika, do you want Mr. Murray to give his explanation?
You will, this is the school department is simply looking for us to co-sponsor a resolution that they've already approved, the school committee's already approved, and effectively requesting that the state cover the cost of the COVID-related expenses and not pass this down onto the town. But I'll let Mr. Murray give the full explanation on this. And my recommendation would be to go along with this as well.
Yeah, and I had looked it over, and it could have been written many different ways, but I think it was good. I think with the state having all these mandates, we should be definitely working together on this to have the state pay for whatever, most of the mandates. So, Mr. Murray, go right ahead, and if you want to give us your 5 cents worth on it.
Sure. I'll be brief. I believe hopefully you've all had a chance to read it. As you know, we're working on a reopening plans, and we have run costs on that. We've had significant debate on the various costs associated with COVID-related reopening. And the bottom line, whether you agree with the full assessment of what we've come up with or not, it's going to cost some money to get kids back to school. We know that, what that is at a finite level, we're still working through, but it's clear that it is above the operational budget of the town. We already sustained some cuts. We have been trying to make, as you know, cuts for our own budget to balance it. And then on top of everything, the state has cut our state aid down to 91%. Couple that with the 1/12 we are getting each month, and some other, we're obviously trying to get supplies when everyone else is trying to get supplies. The money that the state had promised, which we were eligible for $747,000 of, has yet to be distributed and will be distributed through reimbursement. So this ultimately leads to a cash flow problem. We know that, we're working through it, but we'd be remiss if we didn't formally convey our need to the governor and our legislature to ask them to provide immediate funding to our town, not just our town, to every local education agency in the state. So this, instead of talking through the media, which everyone seems to be very good at, I felt the need to draft something that would formally convey our stance to the state. Hopefully that they will pay attention a little bit, and hopefully other LEAs will take this on, use the language, and issue their own resolutions. We have passed this from the school committee last week, and I'm hopeful that you'll see fit to join us in this resolution to get it over to the state.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Murray. Like I said, I have read it, and it could have been done all kinds of ways. I think it gets to the point. It lets them know that we need the money, and I'm going to open up to any council members who have any questions or concerns. Seeing none.
I have a question.
Okay, Councilwoman Dixon.
I am supportive of this resolution. I'm wondering how it's going to be distributed so that it will have the most impact.
Sure. So the last line says that an executed copy shall be sent to the governor, Senate President, Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Coventry Legislative Delegation, so hopefully our local delegation here will push it up the chain of command, and then the Rhode Island Association of School Committees, with the thought that they may be able to tailor the language and distribute it to the LEAs for use throughout the state.
And what about newspaper coverage or other social media coverage?
I mean, that wouldn't be part of a formal distribution. We could certainly look at that. I could talk to the administration about getting it on our Twitter account, on our Facebook and other means of social media. I think that's a good idea. Hopefully there's somebody in the audience covering this meeting tonight from the local newspaper as well. So if they are, I hope they will take this up as a topic for an article.
Many times we get resolutions sent to us from other communities in which we are asked to support resolutions that other communities have developed. And I'm wondering what kind of effort can be made to gather other communities to help support this resolution.
Yeah, I think that it's best done through RIASC, and we can certainly work with Judy over there and her team to get this out. I think it's better through a statewide agency or a committee that deals with every education agency, as opposed to Coventry going out to 38 other cities and towns to get this adopted. So I could certainly reach out to them and work with the administration to reach out to them and ensure they get this distributed. It's on the local school committees and councils, obviously, if they want to adopt.
Thank you.
Is this something that could also be mentioned with the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns to help to push forward?
It could, yeah. Brian Daniels is a good resource and could certainly help push this out with the team over there.
All right, thank you.
If the council approves it tonight, I will, if they'd like, I will push this down to Brian tomorrow.
Okay, that'd be great. I see Councilwoman Bacon.
Yes, well, thank you for this. I do understand where you're coming from. I'm not sure if you received copies that the town council received a few weeks ago from the town of North Smithfield. I don't know if it was also sent to the school committee. Did you all receive?
I don't recall getting anything from North Smithfield. Again, typically that would be distributed through RIASC if they choose to distribute it. I don't see a lot from our individual administration on other resolutions from other towns.
Okay, I mean, because I would like to, and I know where you're going with this, but some of it, because we can't amend this at all since you've already voted on this, so we can't amend. I would like a little more detail, especially even when we refer to the governor, it should be Governor Raimondo. You know, little things like that. I like to see a cleaner version of this. And the town of Coventry, when it's in the third whereas, it says the town of Coventry provided a reopening plan as required. That would be the school department that did that. When you say of Coventry, it's going to sound like it would be the town council that did that. So I'm just a little concerned with that. So I was just wondering, since if you go to all of the council members, we got two resolutions regarding this that are very detailed. And I'm just wondering if the town council should look at what the town of North Smithfield did, if we mirror that and send both of those resolutions on to the Speaker of the House, Raimondo, and everybody else, Governor Raimondo. So I was wondering if, because I know when you made your motion last week, Luke, when this went forward, even if the council does not accept this, this is going forward anyway. So I was just wondering if the town council could look and we look over the North Smithfield, those two resolutions, and put something forward, because the other one is also talking about maintenance of effort and there's nothing in here about that. So I would ask that we hold off on this and we do our own resolutions.
If I may respond, just because there's reference to the language and I wrote the language. There was a specific non-reference to Governor Raimondo because I don't want this to turn into a name-calling match. It's inferred that we have a governor and that her name is Gina Raimondo. So I think she'll get the point. Calling her out as we have in the press and her responding back, trying to get out of that. We all know who the players are, and that was strategic. So just so you understand the intent. If there's other verbiage changes, like the town of Coventry, again, it may be inferred that is the local education agency, which I identified above, that it would be inferred that the town of Coventry, since the council by state law under Title 16 doesn't have purview of the schools, that it would be the town of Coventry as the school committee. However, it is on the town council if they choose to do their own resolution. I will say I was hoping for a joint resolution to have a resounding voice to the governor and the legislature to do their job. And I think we're all in agreement that we want to put a stake in the ground and make them do their job. So I'm hoping that this council doesn't see fit to amend that language and we can move forward tonight. But again, it is on the fellow members to see if they want to do that.
And I understand that, Luke. And when you say joint, it would have been nice that we would have had a joint town council school committee meeting so town council could have had some input also, because I do have a few suggestions that would have been to strengthen this, to send it over to Governor Raimondo.
I appreciate that. It's no slight on the council. Just so you understand, we are at a critical phase where originally we were supposed to open on August 31st. Now it's been pushed back 2 weeks. So time is of the essence. It's not to slight the council on their input, but by the time we would have gotten a joint council session on through the language, I was afraid it would, quite frankly, just push it beyond the effectiveness.
Okay, if I might add, I think it's a good idea. I mean, could you have changed it? Absolutely. But I think by us doing it jointly, it's going to show a little, that we support it, that both as a council and a school committee. So Councilman Bacon, you're welcome to vote accordingly. But I don't think there's any need to, personally don't think there's a need to table this in any way. And I guess the chair will entertain a motion for this on this resolution.
Motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second. All in favor, Madam Clerk?
Gary McGee,
Yes.
Greg Labasanair,
Yes.
Gary Cody,
Yes.
Ann Dixon,
Yes.
Deb Bacon.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for that. And the next item on the agenda is public comment. Mr. Wazika, do we have anybody wishing to speak this time?
Yes, we do. First, I'll be bringing in Mr. Mayor, Mr. Bradford Mayor. Brad,
Go ahead.
state your full name, spell your last name, and give your address, please, for the record.
Hi, Bradford Mayer, Mayer, 360 Hope Furnace Road. Good evening, members of the council. My only comment is that I hope the public gets a chance to vote on a new budget before the end of September. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, Brad.
Okay, anybody else, Mr. Wazika?
Kim Shockley is also.
Okay,
Mrs. Shockley, please state your name, spell your last name, and state your address, please, for the record.
Kimberly Shockley, Shockley, 12 Kingswood Drive. I actually just wanted to agree with Mr. Mayor. I know last year we quickly put forth a second budget when one was rejected, and I'm hoping that we will see, and I know you may not choose to comment on it tonight, but it would be nice to see a budget move forward for the town so we're not on a one-shot.
okay, thank you, Mr. Wazika. Anybody else?
At this point, we have no one else that's looking to speak.
Okay, the chair entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
We have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor, Madam Clerk?
Gary McGee,
Yes.
Greg Labasanair,
Yes.
Gary Cody,
Yes.
Ann Dixon,
Yes.
Deb Bacon.
Yes.
Okay, meeting is adjourned. I want to thank everybody and stay safe, and we'll be in contact. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.